If you are enjoying this podcast and other podcasts on the Dragon Wagon Radio Network, be sure to check out the Dragon Wagon Shop. Awesome t-shirts and mugs from your favorite shows so you can tout your podcast pride all while supporting your favorite podcast network. And make sure to check it often for new items and limited time designs. Shop now at dragonwagonradio.com/shop and get your dragon swag on.
I scared this poor character actor. I forgot his name. He was the guy in the mailroom that screamed, "They dock ya!" And that was the big thing. He was at a Christmas
If you forget
party.
your employee number, they dock you.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like getting his face about it. And I think I scared him a little. But
I don't know if I would even recognize him.
It was, at first I was like, I kind of know him. Like, I know him from somewhere. Like, I was like, where is that? And then he was talking. And all I could hear is, they dock you. So I was like, oh my God.
Your employee number is 88-11/2. It will not be repeated.
Yeah.
Here, why don't you scoot in towards the middle?
Okay.
Get a little closer to me.
All right.
And we're already recording.
Oh, you sneaky.
Just a few seconds ago. Just a
All
minute ago. It'll probably all be cut anyway.
All right.
Because it had no context at all.
No.
Welcome back, listeners, to what's the name of the podcast? I can't remember. It's been months since I recorded an episode. The hell with this. I think that's what we said to ourselves. The hell with this. We just stopped making it. We really took the title to heart. My name is Mark Heiliger, and today I have a guest with me, Ryan Wick.
Hello. Thank you.
Chad is working. He apparently has been working every single day. Even the weekends, even the holidays, every day for like the past 3 months solid. So there has been no opportunity to have him come over and record. So I'm bringing in some, I'm not going to call you second stringer, not at all. This might be more exciting.
You can call me third, fourth. It's all right.
But please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, how you like it, how many parents you have.
Oh my gosh.
And since when?
Well, my name's Ryan Wick, animation editor extraordinaire, and I have one of each. One father, one mother. But and so done a bunch of different series. Right now we've got Paradise PD that's going to be hitting Netflix within less than a week now.
You know what? So you're the first person to come on the podcast who's actually had something to plug.
Yeah.
That's coming out
I wasn't
soon.
even trying to plug. I'm just trying to think of what the hell have I done. But yeah, and did basically radio play editing for the first season of Final Space, which was on TBS earlier in the year. And
that season is over now?
Yeah, that
You're waiting to hear
over.
about a pickup?
Yeah. They've got picked up. They're going, but I was busy with Paradise, so had to miss out on season 2.
Nuts.
So, but Paradise was worth it. And so, and just right now, I am actually going to present a movie to you. So I don't know if you want me to really. Okay.
Well, tell me. That is a total surprise to me.
I am a little nervous because it will be a love or a hated title. Lost Highway.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I've seen it, but it's been a while.
Okay.
And I didn't get it.
Okay.
And maybe you want to explain it to me because I want to get it. I've seen some David Lynch movies that I really love. I love Blue Velvet. I think it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But then I watch Mulholland Drive, and it seems very disconnected. Every scene is sort of about a different thing.
Yeah.
The trash man behind the dumpster is one of the scariest things I've ever seen.
Yes.
But I don't know what it all adds up to.
Well, then you're going to have those very same questions with this movie, because this was basically like the rough draft of Mulholland Drive in some ways.
Okay.
What's really interesting, and I don't want to give too much away of my theories and ideas right out of the gate before you rewatch, but A couple of things that were kind of interesting about this was that Lynch, when he was trying to think of the next project, this was during the O.J. Simpson trial.
No.
And that kind of seeped into his thinking during this time. So kind of keep that in mind when you're watching. And this is a kind of like a director in transition at this period of his career, because he had hit the all-time career peak with Twin Peaks and then Wild at Heart winning Cannes. And so you had this kind of 1-2 punch.
Well, when you got Nicolas Cage involved, the French love Cage.
Yes, they do. And so, and their love of Elvis and Wizard of Oz, it all kind of came together. But here he was at his peak, and then he kind of crashed and burned with the 1-2 punch of season 2 of Twin Peaks,
and
Fire Walk with Me, where he was booed from the same place where they were lauding him.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who love Fire Walk with Me now, and that's another one. I watched all of Twin Peaks in chronological order. Then I went right into the movie, and I went, "What the fuck am I watching?" I just didn't get it. I just don't know.
What's interesting is that there was all these questions that they posed in that movie that kind of opened up all these possibilities of what was going on in the series, but they never finished that story for 25 years. Yeah. Well, even the movie, like the movie itself, you're thinking, okay, this is where they're going to kind of tie all these loose ends. They just opened more. And that's
he's the original J.J. Abrams, isn't he?
Yeah, really.
Everything's a mystery box.
Exactly. And so, what's interesting about Twin Peaks The Return, is that basically, the bulk of that movie is addressing all of this stuff that was brought up in Fire Walk with Me. This was a movie that even fans of Twin Peaks for a while hated. And it's only, like you said, till recently that there's been this reassessment of that movie. Mm-hmm. But that was actually... What's interesting is that there's always been a kind of dream logic to all of Lynch's work, but it's always kind of had a little bit of grounding. Like even with Twin Peaks, of course there's dream logic everywhere, but you had usually a character here or there, like Agent Cooper, that would kind of anchor things a little bit, kind of give it context.
Agent Cooper was the grounding in Twin Peaks?
Well,
the guy who... Didn't he do something weird, like he would throw rocks at bottles to see, like, oh, let's find out the victim's name because the bottles will tell us. Exactly. He was the realistic one?
He was. But he was actually kind of like a guide into this weird world a little bit. And so, as ridiculous as it was, throwing rocks and all that, you kind of... all your trust was in Cooper. You know, just follow him and things will be okay, even if it got really dark. But here in Lost Highway, we are basically going into long form dream logic.
Okay.
Where reality is just straight out questioned from beginning to end. Frame 1, anything's up for grabs. And there are cues in here throughout of what's going on, but it's not just visual, but also the sound design. And that's really going to be keys, really listen to the sounds that are being used. And I thought this would be a cool kind of movie to kind of talk about, because also from an editorial standpoint, what he's doing here, he's deconstructing narrative film in a way that, especially at that time, just wasn't really being done. Now you're seeing it more frequently, and people are kind of pushing and seeing what kind of rules you can break with the narrative structure. Here, he just kind of decimates it, and each act has different editing rhythms. The first act is going to feel a little slow, and you just want to be move on with it a little bit, but there's a purpose for that. And then the second act, you're just confused and it's moving almost too fast and it's energetic. It's what the fuck? And then the third act is melding these two together, these two ideas, these two worlds, and how it loops upon itself. And so I'm jumping in a little too deep too early here, but before we've actually watched it. But yeah, see, this is what this movie does to me. Like, I'll just ramble on and without anyone asking for it. But
Now that you have someone actually asking you
yeah,
to do
yeah,
it, it's
hey.
like, oh God.
Oh, finally, after all these years. But it's an fascinating movie, but it's not perfect by any means. There are moments in here that feel very, very 90s. Like you've got, especially in the music areas, you've got German Rammstein music that's just a little cringeworthy. You've got fucking Marilyn Manson in it that
Hey,
you just...
don't knock the music, pal, because Trent Reznor produced the soundtrack.
Now that...
And I'm a big Nine Inch Nails fan.
Now
so you better watch it.
that is where it works.
Okay.
And what's interesting too is that you'll see like little influences in here that people have kind of stolen since. More prestigious directors and even some shoddier ones too. But like it actually, for a movie that initially failed critically and financially, it's kind of had this, I wouldn't say a resurgence like something like Fire Walk With Me, but there has been a reassessment, especially after what he had done since. And also too, you've seen like a lot of the influences that kind of branched out of it over the years. So, okay, I'll shut up now. And if you want, and we can kind of check it out, unless you got more questions.
I'll always have more questions when it comes to David Lynch. I want to share a partial second-hand anecdote about David Lynch before we get into it. I don't want to say where the story came from because it's his story and I don't want to like co-opt it or anything. But basically at a work social function where this person was working with David Lynch on a project, he decided to say like how much he liked Dune. And he was like, you know what? I know it like critically didn't get liked that much, but I like Dune. I think you were onto something there. It was really good. I loved it. And David Lynch essentially shut down. He just wouldn't talk. He wouldn't make eye contact. It was pretty crazy. No. And the next day he went into work and the boss guy was like, we don't talk about Dune at work. It brings up a lot of bad memories for David. Oh, no. So we don't talk about Dune. I have not seen Dune, but I've always wanted to.
I actually agree with your friend. Like, I really like it. And I think it was ahead of its time as far as what they were trying to do narratively with it. Like, they're doing a lot of kind of heavy lifting with, like narration, or at least the whispers in people's heads. They're kind of trying to get a lot of the author's work
into the paperback
the
edition of the book is 7 inches thick.
Yeah.
It's a big book. Yeah. And trying to make, I don't even know how long it was, 2.5 hours? Was it 2 hours?
At least 2.5, I think. Yeah.
Even if it was a 3-hour movie, it's going to be hard to compress all that shit in there. And I think it may have been one of the first fanboy reactions to like, they didn't make a perfect version of my favorite book ever. Yeah. And it just spun out from there. It wasn't for the fans. It wasn't for the average moviegoer. No. It wasn't for anybody in the end.
In the end, yeah. Like but like at the same time too, it's got a weird charm. And this is something though, the more I kind of talk about stuff that I really like, you'll kind of get a sense of like what I love ambitious projects more than anything. Like even if it doesn't fully work, if they're trying to kind of like reach for that like holy grail of whatever that ambition, that agenda is, like if they're just trying something different, experimental, or just trying to do something wacky, I'll give them points for that. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not fully there, fully formed, like A for effort. Like
sure. Because like movie making is a business and people got to make money. Yeah. But when that was Warner Brothers? Universal. Yeah. When Universal, one of the big ones, they're making money hand over fist in a variety of ways. They're always making something else. Those are the people that should be taking risks. Yeah. Those are not the ones who should only be making tentpole releases like Disney does now. Every movie has got to be the biggest one of the season. Yeah. They can afford to lose some money. They can afford to take some risks. Yeah. I wish they would.
And what was wild too is that, like going back to Doom, I can't imagine what this was like because I've only seen it at home, like originally on VHS and then in other formats over the years. But like when apparently when you went to the theater, you were handed a sheet
with
which
all
the
the
different
races
terms
and stuff and the
breaking down like this is what who is and how they're related to everyone else, and then a glossary of like names, words, and terms, like just what do the when they say this is what they really mean, like all these definitions. I can't. No wonder that thing failed. It never had a chance.
Right.
But like when you're at home, you can quickly rewind and what the heck were they saying, and kind of try to put it together a little
some
bit
of those
more.
words.
And so yeah, and so it kind of that kind of film rewards on repeat viewings, and in a lot of ways, with Lost Highway, you have to see it more than once. You have to, and I think it's great that you've actually seen it before.
Because now this will be my second time.
Yeah, and so there's, with that context, then you're kind of a little ahead of the curve then, and so then we can kind of piece together what the hell happened after the next viewing.
Okay.
But
somewhere around here, I've got a fan edit of Dune that I intend to be my first viewing of Dune, because apparently it's got all of these deleted scenes reintegrated into the film. It's got a bunch of storyboards. I don't know if this is all stuff from a Dune book, like on the making of Dune, or if there was a thing with a bunch of extra features that people are putting back together. But I think it like doubles the running time of the movie.
Yes.
And it has everything ever produced in any fashion for the movie Dune. It's in there now. Yeah. And I want that to be my first try, because I've been told that the theatrical cut is such a fucking mess.
I would actually dissuade you, because I've seen it.
Oh.
Because like this, it's actually, if it's the one I'm thinking of, because if it's a fan edit, maybe they combine.
There's like 4 different ones, but yeah, I'm sure it's the same thing.
Because some of the stuff you're talking about, like the storyboards and all that, there was, I think, gosh, what was it? ABC or some network had, in the late 80s, decided we're going to kind of throw out Dune to the masses and on TV, and they basically were trying to fix the narrative mess that they saw in their eyes. So they basically were restructured, threw in all the deleted scenes that you're talking about. But then before the movie even begins, there's like a 20-minute lead up of like, this is the history of Dune. And it's all storyboards and like a narrator's talking about it.
They did this for TV?
Yeah, this was for TV, and
wow.
Lynch didn't want anything to do with it. So it was an Alan Smithy film.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, and so a lot of the deleted scenes are that's probably the only way you're going to be able to see a lot of it. But it's the pace, the rhythm of it is really off. Not a lot of it's great. And so it's definitely something you should watch, especially but like as far as the first time, it won't sell you the movie at all. Like,
okay, I was just trying to be completist about it.
Yeah,
have the most information available in front of me at the time.
Maybe it could help, but like there is a
you think I
charm
should see
to the
original film with all of its warts.
Well, if you want the full Lynchy kind of experience, then go with the theatrical cut, because that's him, even if he has disowned it.
But if I'm hungry for more, then I can watch the other one.
That's what I would suggest, me personally. But like it is an interesting experiment that they were trying to do, and shows how desperate they were to make that work.
Yeah, because they'd already spent so much money making the movie.
And they lost so much, and I bet like 20th Century Fox was thanking their lucky stars that Lucas didn't hire. Star Wars on they didn't hire Lynch for Return of the Jedi. But
he was up for that.
Yeah, he actually turned away that film for Dune, and so it's really interesting that your friend was saying that about Lynch's kind of feelings about Dune, because there's a great book, Lynch on Lynch, that's out there, where he talks about every single one of his films up to that point, which I think was like Fire Walk With Me was the cutoff point. Mm-hmm. And he was actually not defending. Are you telling me
this guy was trying to like redo Truffaut on Truffaut?
Yeah, he totally was.
What an asshole.
Yeah. And I was totally into that. Like, I was like, oh, Truffaut. And then I saw that, and I was like, ooh. And so basically, he was kind of saying, yeah, it doesn't all work, but like he was happy with it. to a point, and he was even saying like I would have done a sequel. Like in this book, he was kind of saying this, and I was really surprised about that.
Yeah, that does surprise me.
But
I don't know. I don't know what.
Dig it up. I gotta dig that up. See if I'm just not making it up out of my.
Right. But I'm not sure what year my friend's story comes from exactly.
Yeah.
What he was working on with him, I can't answer that. So it may have been fresher after the sting. Or
maybe enough people have just come to him saying, "What the hell were you thinking?" That he
didn't know how to react when somebody actually liked it.
It's like, go fuck yourself when Britain Dune comes.
Are you making fun of me?
Yeah.
I can't tell if this is a joke.
Let me walk my cow around the downtown area of LA promoting my next film. But anyway, So I do have a soft spot for Dune. Like, as you can tell, like I'm not a full Lynch apologist. Like Inland Empire is one that I can't even justify.
I saw a documentary about Lynch that included some of the making of Inland Empire. Yeah. And his whole work process. Maybe we should talk about this after the movie. Okay. But let's not forget, we're talking about this documentary where he just kind of makes it up as he goes sometimes.
Intuition is a key for him, like of just spur of the moment, and you'll hear that a lot in any kind of documentaries or behind the scenes of any of his films. A lot of the most infamous scenes of like Wild at Heart were like made up on the day. Yeah. And like some of the stuff that Laura Dern agreed to do and all that, you're kind of like, you are so brave, but like
trusting.
Yeah, well, that's the key, and that's actually something too that we'll definitely talk about afterwards, especially with more mature Me Too kind of movement eyes of like what the role of women in general in his films, like especially with Twin Peaks that haven't come back. There was a reassessment of some of his work, and there was some criticism about his treatment of women as a whole in his whole filmography. And then there are defenders too saying that he's actually making strong women, and so there's a real, especially with this film, there's a lot to talk about with Patricia Arquette's character and her role and how it's portrayed, because she was put through the ringer, or the actress herself was kind of put through the ringer for what she was being asked to do in this film. And some of it is very unpleasant, but like there is a purpose. I feel there is a purpose for it narratively, and we can kind of go into that a little deeper when we're done here.
You're a women abuser apologist.
Get ready for it, folks. What? Oh man, I'm screwed.
No, it'll be fine. Let's get going on this movie that I just remembered on the poster. They said 2 thumbs down from Siskel and Ebert. They put that right on the poster.
Yeah, they did.
Because they were proud of that.
He was proud. Yeah.
Siskel and Ebert didn't get this movie, just like I didn't get this movie. Maybe you can help me get this movie.
Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully we can do this together.
We'll see this, but the pressure's on you now.
I know. So, and you can hold my hand. We'll get through this. And see you on the other way, the other end.
Let's roll it.
Okay.
We've met before, haven't we?
I don't think so.
At your house, don't you remember?
No, I don't.
As a matter of fact, I'm there right now.
That's crazy, man.
Call me.
I like that.
I think there's no such thing as a bad coincidence.
I like to remember things my own way, not necessarily the way they happened.
Someone broke in and taped us while we slept.
Is that you? Are both of them you?
We have to get out of here.
Why didn't you tell me anything?
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
If I ever found out somebody was making out with her,
He'll kill us.
I I told you I was here.
How'd you do that?
Ask me.
Okay, suffice it to say, I don't know if we can even attempt explaining the plot, because it's kind of all over the place. You're going to have to see the movie or piece it together from what we're talking about. I guess I should say spoiler alert, but I'm not even sure that applies in this case.
Well, what we're going to be talking
It ends at
about,
the beginning, sort of.
And that's actually the biggest key of this whole thing, is that what we're seeing is an infinite loop. Now, my first question to you.
Okay.
And like when
I was sort of building an interpretation of this thing, but I'm sure it's way different than
and
yours.
this is the beauty, if you want to call it, of Lynch's stuff, is that anybody can read it a million different ways and they can all be right. Like he kind of enjoys that. It means something to him in his way, but that doesn't mean that that's the final truth of whatever the hell is going on in the narrative.
Has he ever even made it a habit of explaining his films? Like he doesn't share his version.
He'll say something very broad. Like a lot of his films, he'll say it's a woman in trouble. Inland Empire, Twin Peaks, all that. It's focused on women in trouble. Here, he's actually made a distinction in this one, saying a man in trouble, which is kind of like one of the only films that he'll ever make that claim. And let me backtrack a little bit with the first question I wanted to give you after this. When I saw this in the theater, when it first came out, friends and I, we all came out of the theater, and the first thing I asked them was, do you think Fred ever left his cell?
Right. Well, that's no. That my answer would be no.
Yeah.
Can I quick go through?
Yeah.
I'll give a Cliff's Notes version of mine, because
definitely.
it's not
We're
even,
jumping ahead.
It's not even fully formed. But okay. Lives with his wife. Wife ends up murdered. He's arrested. Immediately found guilty. Like, they don't even show the trial. He's just guilty of this crime. Death row, in his prison cell, and blue lights start flashing, and he becomes somebody else.
Yes.
Somebody who is in the DMV records or whatever, and they just let him go because it's not who they put in there. He has his own little adventure completely separated from what we just saw, the movies in two halves. And I'm thinking that due to the amount of, fantasy realization happening in the second half of this movie, and I guess specifically I'm talking about David Lynch's hatred for tailgaters becomes a whole scene where these gangsters like break the window of this fucking driver who's tailgating him. And they're like, don't you know how many car lengths it takes to stop when you're going 35 miles an hour? 6 car lengths. That's 150 feet. People get in accidents every day. And it's this crazy thing. And it's just like people are doing whatever they want to, whatever your deepest desires are coming true in this half of the story. Balthazar Getty, who is the actor who portrays the transformed Bill Pullman character. I don't even remember his name. Pete. He gets the girl. He's friends with a mobbed up Santa Claus who just kind of lets him work on his awesome car every day. He's got nice enough parents, I guess. One of his parents is Gary Busey. I guess that's sort of a fantasy come to life right there.
Probably one of the sweetest roles Busey has ever played. It's just a big teddy bear.
Yeah, well, he gets wrapped up in this whole crime caper thing. He's gonna run away with the woman he's in love with, who is the girlfriend of the mob boss, and it's this crazy story happening to a nobody. And I'm thinking that Bill Pullman, after he got the sleeping drugs from the prison doctor, this was his dream that he had while he was asleep. And it sort of starts to fall apart at the end, but he's still doing things like getting revenge on people. He literally has a devil on his shoulder handing him the gun and the knife with which to kill people. And I feel like at the end, the very last shot of the movie, aside from the road, is Bill Pullman escaping the police, and the blue lights start flashing again, indicating some other transformation, except he starts smoking, and you can see, like, in his writhing in the front seat, he's getting all bloated, like a weird mess, and I'm thinking that's him in the electric chair in that moment.
Now that's interesting.
He's stuck in the fantasy at that point. He doesn't even know where he is anymore.
Now, that's actually kind of interesting.
But maybe it's too literal. Maybe David Lynch, like, he wouldn't even consider that.
Yeah.
Because it's too easily explained. But that, I mean, it doesn't explain everything, because this, the mystery man, played by Robert Blake sans eyebrows, he was in the first half of the movie.
Yeah.
Before this dream, in my theory, even began. So I mean, I have no idea.
Okay.
Let's hear your whole thing.
All right. So now, that was just kind of like the broad kind of strokes of the film itself. So now, when the film opens, we are in that lost highway. We are in the desert.
The credits are playing over the road. Yeah.
But like, we're in the middle of that road, and we're going to be seeing that image quite a bit throughout the film. But it's really key that we start right there. And then when we're done, the credits are done, and the film officially kind of starts, we find Fred, Bill Pullman, disheveled, traumatized. He's shaking, he's sweating, he was up all night doing what we will eventually find out.
Playing the saxophone.
No, but... So now, you hear that Dick Laurent is dead, little message that at his front door, which actually happened in real life. Apparently, David Lynch was at home, and someone buzzed him and said, Dick Laurent is dead. And he looked out the window, and no one was there.
Weird.
Yeah. So, like, one of the key things, though, during all of that, is that after that message, he's kind of looking out the window, you hear the sirens. Police sirens.
I remember hearing cars kind of driving and all that,
Yeah, so what that's indicating is that this story has been told more than once. We are now rebooting this story. And what this story is essentially, in its base, terrible marriage that's falling apart. You've got Fred and Renee. They are just going through the motions. They, like you said when we were watching, it's as if they're talking like aliens. They're not talking naturally. It's like they're literally just
they're giving
saying
each other
words.
a good 6 seconds in between lines of dialogue, and it's like, oh my god, nobody has a conversation like this.
But they're just on autopilot. They're just saying things that are kind of programmed in this probably.
They're definitely not passionate. About anything.
And that's the key
except
here.
the saxophone.
Yeah. And so this thing's dead. This relationship's dead. And so apparently when he's performing at one point, he sees Renee with Andy, and they leave together, and this sparks something. This essentially sparks the rest of this journey that Fred's going to take. So what has happened is that at some point, Renee, unhappy in her marriage, finds this guy, Andy, bumps into him at that place called Moke's. This is something that she's repeated twice now. Once is Renee, once is Alice.
And he is a pornographer.
Director, yes.
Yeah.
And he's got a job for her. And what that is that basically it was a casting audition with this guy, Mr. Eddie, also known as Dick Laurent. So she was starring in some of his movies, started a relationship with Dick Laurent. So here, after all that's happened, here's Fred at the concert performing, sees Andy and Renee walking off, and at some point he's putting this all together. He follows Renee at some point to that Lost Highway Hotel where Mr. Eddie, Dick Laurent, and Renee have their little thing. He waits till Renee leaves and then proceeds to kidnap and murder out in the desert Mr. Eddie. Then he tries to act as if everything's okay. But yet, nothing's changed. Now we're kind of in that first act section of the videotapes and everything. He's trying to kind of get the relationship going. They're in bed with probably one of the least passionate love scenes ever on film.
Right.
And so here he is.
It ends with "It's
Yeah.
okay, it's okay."
With the little pat on the back, which is what's interesting is that in this scene too, it's really important because you hear this song from This Mortal Coil called "Song of the Siren," and this happens 3 times throughout the movies. This song.
Okay.
It's kind of like an indicator of what he yearns for. He's yearning for this passion that is lacking in his life. He's yearning for whatever maybe they once had, perhaps, but something that he hasn't been able to attain in her. Now, this is all through a male gaze. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to force her to be something that she is not. And so then, of course, you get the pat and all that, and you get this story about, like, I had this dream of you, and you were in bed, but it wasn't you. But it looked like you. It's like you're not the woman you're supposed to be.
Right. It looked like her, but he could tell it wasn't her still, which is a very dream thing. It happens all the time.
Well, also a very possessive thing. And if you go back,
like only he knows who she is.
Yeah, well, exactly. But and also too, if you look at how everything is shot between the two of them during this, even though it's methodically slow and dry, he's always looming over her.
Wow.
She's always under him. He's always got his arm up against the wall with her.
Yeah, trapping her
pinning
in
her
space.
in.
Yeah.
She's cleaning off the makeup, and he's looming behind her. And like
when he walks around the corner, she kind of is shocked.
Exactly. Now, and that's the thing. When those tapes come, those tapes mean something to Renee because of pornos.
Right.
And it's the same kind of tape that looks. It's the same all black tape that Mr. Eddie
had in his glove box. Hey, you want a porno?
Hey, kid, you want a porno? You know,
gross
like
old
that kind of
pornography in the glove box.
Yeah. So here she is thinking that the jig is up. Someone's
trying to
either blackmail her or screw
her,
the relationship over that she's had with Fred. And so what's interesting is when you see her, when she's got that thing out and Fred comes around the corner, he's like, hey, what's that? She jumps. She's scared of him. Mm-hmm. And she's terrified of what's on that tape. And with each tape that comes, like the second time, she doesn't want to come into the room. He's like, are you coming to watch this or not? You know?
She's off getting a coffee, though.
Yeah. Oh,
it
yeah.
Takes a minute,
she's
man.
Freaking out. And what's interesting, the third one, and this is key, is that she's not there at all. So he just turns it on, and that's really key. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So anyway, so these tapes start coming. What do those tapes represent? It's when the police come and they're kind of questioning Fred and Renee. There's that whole thing about being videotaped.
Right. He doesn't like video cameras because he wants to remember things the way he remembered them, not necessarily how they actually happened.
Yep.
Which is a big deal. So you're automatically got an unreliable narrator.
Yep. Exactly. And just basically red lights flashing like this means something. So then after all of this happens with 2 tapes, they go over to the party, Andy's party. Now Andy and Renee they think that Fred's clueless.
Yeah.
And basically they look down on him. There's that.
And at this point in this timeline, he's already killed Dick Laurent.
And so now he's at the party. Now the mystery man comes into it. Now the mystery man has been around throughout. We just don't know it yet, because throughout everything
that's the face he saw on her face in the bedroom.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's been looming around, and also too we see, and it's really kind of brilliant. The way that Lynch has shot this is that you'll constantly see doubles of Fred whenever he's home. Like when he came back, like when he came back, not just the mirror, but like when he came back from his performance where he was going nuts and then called home because supposedly Renee was going to be
home
reading and she
never
wasn't.
answered. Yeah.
So he comes home and one area is all bright and beautiful. And you see Fred as he is. He turns that corner into the bedroom and he becomes this dark silhouette. There are 2 sides to this coin. Mm-hmm. And what's he going to find on the other side of that? Like, you don't know. He does, like, you can sense this kind of rage building in him. Now, of course, she was there, and that's when they had their the story of the dream and all that. Now, so again, we go back to this thing with Andy's party, this mystery man. This isn't a guy. This is you. I don't necessarily want to call him the devil, but I almost kind of see him as the evil of men, of what men do.
Because he is a friend of Dick's.
Andy. If you notice,
he's not a friend of Andy's. He recognizes him, but he's like, oh, it's a friend of Dick.
But he knows and recognizes and acknowledges him.
Okay,
that's the thing.
It's
like,
not a phantom. He is in the room. People can see him.
Women don't have communication with him. They don't really have any contact of any sort with him. But the men do. The three key men in this film, which is really kind of interesting. Especially when we kind of start going into how Renee / Alice has been treated later in the story.
Yeah.
But so there's this whole thing about that's great conversation with Fred and the mystery man of call me at your home. I'm like, there,
I'm at your home right now.
And there's this whole thing of like, I never come unless I'm invited. I'm
vampire.
Paraphrasing. Yes.
Totally vampire.
But
very
it's that
pale.
whole thing of like this evil, like I don't come unless
it doesn't
part
happen
of
on
you.
its own.
Yeah,
you've got to make it happen.
You called me. You want something from me, and so here I am. So there's this whole thing of like those tapes, that invasion, that whole thing. That's him coming and seeping into the house, and so shortly after that, So you have that call. Let me backtrack back to the conversation when you have Fred calling the house and having a dual conversation with a single man, this mystery man. What's interesting is that after that conversation, then we roll into Fred confronting Andy, going, "Who is this guy?" Now this is a key thing here because it kind of plays
There's a lot
into
of keys.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
so
it
many.
is.
It's not even the blue key from Mulholland Drive.
No, so many. So here we go with this portion of the murder spree. Fred hears the words Dick Laurent for the first time, or the second time, excuse me. There's the intercom.
Yeah.
But then Andy says, oh, he's a friend of Dick Laurent's. This Mr. Guy's a friend of Dick Laurent's. Emotionally, you're seeing Fred kind of freaking out. He's starting to kind of get confused. He's like,
and he says, but Dick Laurent is dead.
Yeah. And
he knows because he killed him.
And Andy lets this slip, though. Yeah. But wait, how would you know him? There's no way that Andy would have known this guy unless he knew about everything that has been going on.
Yeah, how do you know that guy? I don't.
Yeah. And so then once he kind of processes it after he accidentally lets that slip, he kind of does this little eye communication to Renee saying, get over here. And then he tries to cover his tracks very crudely of the, oh no, Dick's not dead. He can't be dead. And then he gets very defensive, like, how the hell do you know Dick? And all that. And then Renee starts freaking out. It's like, we got to get him out of here. And trying to kind of get between these two before it really unravels. So now they're at home. There's a weird kind of spectral light that happens. And so then Renee's outside and Fred goes in the house. The phone rings. It rings the exact number of times that it rang on the mystery man's phone in the party. So literally, like the camera zooms in and the soundtrack has this really chilling kind of effect on Fred and everything. He literally, it was almost as if he picked up the phone in his head in a sense. Like he's having the other half of that conversation in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's giving you clues that this is a man that's psyche split. He has already committed murder, and what is next? He has to essentially now, because he has exposed himself to Andy and to Renee, he now has to clean it up. So that's when
so he's going to kill his wife and this guy Andy just because they probably know he's the one who killed Dick Laurent.
So
And he doesn't even mind killing his wife because they have such a bad relationship?
Well,
That's
there's
all?
this jealousy and rage that's been going on forever. Like that whole thing with the padding of the back of the lovemaking. There's that beautiful, ultra low angle shot of him over the edge of the bed. Once that pet starts, he slinks back into the bed out of frame, and you just feel that tension, that rage, that male ego.
Don't touch me.
You know, he's just like seething. It's all bottled in,
right?
And that's a key word, bottled in, for a little later. So here we go. She's calling out to him because, like, at this point, she's getting ready for bed. She's cleaning up. He's kind of looming in the background.
He has disappeared down the darkest hallway I've ever seen.
Oh,
they need some light bulbs in that hallway.
Yeah,
and he gets to the end and he sees himself in a mirror,
and
that's where.
Then what's really interesting is that when she comes to that hall and calls out and there's no answer, we cut to the living room and we see not one but two shadows walking in the room.
Yeah.
So we know that the mystery man, or his darker half, we could call it.
Oh, I just assumed that was one person with two light sources, but I guess I don't know.
Dude, you're just ruining it. No, you're ruining the magic. No, so here we got then him essentially ready to kill. Like he's flipped now and he's ready to make the move. That morning or later that night then, Andy's killed. He goes back home. He has the videotape, this third videotape, where it shows him covered in his wife's blood. And his wife literally dissembled, like just torn to shreds.
Yeah.
So this is where then we've got the police chasing, going down the desert and all that. He's trying to flee from the police. He gets caught. That's when he gets punched, sit down, killer and all that. What's really key is that you've got Fred saying, please tell me I didn't kill my wife. He's not claiming innocence.
Right.
He's just like, please tell me.
He's trying to remember it the way he wants to.
I don't want to face the truth. And that's the real key. And so then when he's in the cell, when he's on death row now, waiting to be killed, he can't sleep. The images are haunting him now. He can't get up out of his head, and his head is just throbbing. He wants it to stop. It's overwhelming him. It's making him like incapacitated. So here they drug him. They put him back into the cell to get him to relax and shut the hell up because the guards are being driven crazy. And then he has that image. Literally, a curtain is pulled back.
And he sees
cabin. He sees this cabin. So all that rage, all that truth with a capital T, all that reality of what he has done is now being contained in this cabin, in this vessel. And then who comes out of that but the mystery man?
Yeah.
This kind of source of truth, of this evil, the source of all this evil. And then all of a sudden, those crazy lights occur. And he starts writhing, and his body, he actually, if you kind of watch that scene, it's just like in the car at the end of the film. His face is throbbing and mutating and all that. And what's interesting, I never thought of this, and really plays into this too, of what you just said earlier, is that there's that kind of melting feel too, of like maybe
there's like smoke involved. Yeah,
maybe he was being electrocuted, which plays into this even more. So because what's going on is that literally that throbbing forehead has now split open, and the camera literally goes inside.
That was somebody's head?
Yeah,
I couldn't tell what that was.
That's his head. You're going inside.
I gotta do frame by frame on this thing.
So now you're going in his head. Now we are in basically his imagination of what he wants in life. Now, and the very next shot, it's overexposed and everything, but you can kind of see a shoulder and the face, and you're literally hearing a peeling off of flesh. He's literally taking his old Fred face off.
Once we're done recording this, we can watch that scene again, because I really want to investigate this a little closer.
So now here we are in his new reality, what he wants. Now we could call this just fantasy, whether he was passed out after those drugs, or what I like is what you just said, is that he died and now he's in purgatory. He's being judged. Because what we got now is a couple of things happening. First, Pete. Pete is everything that Fred wants to be, yearns to be.
He's younger.
He's young. He's hot, but but like also to not only that, like women want him,
right?
In that very kind of
later
male...
on, some police are like, "This guy gets more pussy than a toilet seat."
Yeah, but like that's the other key, is that men yearn to be him.
Yeah,
and then you've got these big, powerful men that are always coming to him. If you notice, people are coming to him for the first time. Everyone's coming to him, and you touched on this earlier, is that we're now in a story that is livelier. It's all sensory. It's all about emotion. It is big and it's broad and it's in your face.
And it feels like a dime store novel, like a real adventure that this guy finds himself on.
Yeah, this is old school film noir territory now, where the young kid gets involved with the wrong girl.
Yeah.
And the big gangster is pissed off and going after him. But so now all this is happening, but at the same time, it's the other portion. Basically, the first 50 minutes with Bill Pullman has not been forgotten. It's constantly trying to seep in.
Yeah.
And so here we are with three important figures. You've got Sheila, the young innocent girlfriend of Pete, and then the parents. They're almost like his conscience, like Fred's conscience.
Yeah.
Of like, or angels, especially if he's dead, like, or in purgatory. Like this is like the angels on his shoulder. And if you, especially in the beginning, look at the scenes where he's interacting with them. Sheila's first dialogue with him is, "What happened that night? You've changed. What happened to your face?" And it's not talking about Pete's face. It's talking about Fred's face. Mm-hmm. Why did you change? Why, like, what happened that night? Meaning the murder of Renee and everything. Like, why are you doing this? And the parents are the same. Of like, what you did that night.
They don't even say, they don't show. Like, it kind of cuts to this flashback of the same blue lights flashing outside of the house.
Yeah.
And his parents suddenly get panicked and they start running towards the camera. And when he's trying to describe it, he just cries. Yeah. They don't even say, "What do you think that moment is about?" That's the moment of the murder, you think?
Yeah.
That's when he really changes.
His conscience, or maybe they are representations of his real parents, and maybe an old girlfriend, like the last great relationship he had.
Like,
but
those
good,
people,
positive people in his life.
The last people he would ever want to let down.
Yeah.
And they can't even, they don't even understand who he is anymore.
And when it was happening, it was like, "What are you to come back? No, don't go to the dark side," that kind of thing. And so he turned his back on them then. And now he's a new person. They don't recognize him. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about all of this is that because everything is so sensory and just like constant, nonstop, there's one point, though, where it does stop, where, I'm going to be talking about Alice. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it goes in along the lines of what we're talking right here, though. It's important, is that when Alice can't see him, where he's got to be alone for the first time in this new facade.
He immediately goes to the other girl.
The dream starts collapsing.
Ah.
And if you notice in the room, it's almost like a cell. The way that the bed's positioned and everything else, he's looking up in the ceiling, and
is that when all the bugs
are there?
Yeah,
yeah. And literally, the frame is shaking out of focus. Everything is
they
collapsing.
do that. Yeah, they do that a lot throughout the movie. Like, whenever there's a difficult thing he's going through, it's real
truth. Whenever the reality of what he's done is seeping through, because like in a position like that, though, like where here he is, he can't have that sensory experience. All he has now is himself. And so what's left but what he's done? Mm-hmm. And it's just like what happened to Bill Pullman in the cell, of like just seeing those images of the murders and losing his goddamn mind. And so he goes out and sees Sheila again. So
He's got to distract himself.
he's got to, or else he's going to lose his mind in this hellscape that he's created for himself. So, all right, so let's rewind now. So back to now this is all before Alice has come into play and Mr. Eddie. So here already, though, with Sheila and the parents and all that, already we're seeing a completely different person than Fred ever was. You know, you've got Sheila that is just throwing herself on him and just adoring everything that he does, and just like, well, and she's the one that's insecure, not Pete/Fred.
Mm-hmm.
There's that whole thing in the car of like, why don't you like me? That's something that it's almost like that male ego needs to be stroked.
Yeah.
Of like, you know, that yearning.
She's the one with problems,
Yeah.
not me. Yeah.
But like, she wants me, and I could turn her away at any point. But but like that kind of that desire is attractive to him because he never had that in real life. So he's this disgruntled soul. No matter, already in the beginning, we see that he is still Fred deep down under this new skin.
Mm-hmm.
And so here he's at work. Everyone loves him. He's the best mechanic in the world. And here all these big guys from like gangster guys are coming and going, you're the best. And Mr. Eddie just adores him and everything that Fred wished he could have, like from his peers, so to speak.
Right.
And so
It's a real masculine job,
Yeah.
being a car mechanic,
yeah.
as opposed to playing alto sax or whatever for a weird experimental jazz club.
Like acid jazz or something, yeah. But
He's the worst saxophonist in the world. Can I just
Yeah.
say that? But apparently, very well paid
Yeah.
because he lives up in the hills.
Hey, he had a good gig there. Yeah. Apparently at the same place, he had a permanent gig there. It was pretty nice. So, yeah. And so that's, again, like you got Mr. Eddie now, and you're getting this whole thing of like Mr. Eddie constantly like just adorning all this praise. Constant.
Yeah,
It's
it is
never
nonstop.
ending. Of like, oh, you're amazing, Pete. Oh, look at this and that.
And I
It's
made a
just
note
like-
while we were watching it. While they're driving, Pete says, like, pull over. I want to check something out. Pops the hood for 10 seconds, tightens 2 screws, gets back in the car, and they keep driving. And Mr. Eddie's like, amazing.
Yeah.
So much smoother. You didn't do anything. It was just easy. It was like a life of almost luxury with no responsibilities. And he was good at his job, and everybody loved him.
Yeah.
Except for those few figures who don't know him.
Yeah. And so, like, here we are now. Like, after the whole thing, the wonderful scene with the tailgate and all that, that's all about emotion, passion, everything. So now, after all of that is done, there's a very key thing that happens here, is that Mr. Eddie has now returned back to the garage and is dropping off Pete. And cops have been kind of waiting and kind of tailing Pete. Like, they didn't just let Pete go just out of the goodness of their heart. They want to know how the heck he got in there
cell.
and where the hell is Fred. So what they're doing is tailing Pete, hoping that it would lead to Fred.
Yeah.
So here they've been tailing this whole time. And of course, these guys, like you said earlier, are just like jealous as beyond belief of like, oh man, he's getting all the girls and everything. But then there was that key line, and it's only said once, is that it's the first time that the cops see Mr. Eddie with Pete. And one of the cops says, who's that guy with Pete? And the other cop says, Laurent. It's the only time it's said in the whole movie. And so if you're not listening to that, then you miss what's going on in the overall arc of Fred's psyche, of why he went on this murderous spree. So this guy, Mr. Eddie, is Dick Laurent.
Who is Robert Loggia.
Yeah. And so then here we go with the whole, hey, Pete, you want a porno kind of thing, too, to kind of link another little piece of this puzzle, bridging these
Another
worlds.
videotape, just like the other ones.
Yeah. So then we kind of move a little forward to another day, and reality is starting to already seep in. We're hearing Bill Pullman's saxophone music, if I remember correctly, in the radio.
And Pete can't stand it. He's
Yeah,
got to change the channel.
He's got a headache, and that's key. His head is throbbing. He's got to turn it off. And once he does that, Mr. Eddie comes back into the garage because of after that tailgating incident. He's got to get his car fixed again. But who's there but Alice, who's identical, a doppelganger.
A blonde doppelganger of Renee.
Yeah.
His wife in real life.
And what you're seeing is literally mirror images. You've got different hair colors. You've got Renee, who's brunette. Then you've got Alice, who's blonde. And if you notice, too, the bruises in Fred's head, on his forehead, in the jail, is on the exact opposite side.
Okay.
For Pete. We're seeing mirror images here. So this is going on throughout. Little breadcrumbs to kind of link everything together. And so once he sees Alice, this is basically Fred's yearning depiction of what his wife should be in his demented male mind.
Yeah.
And
the completely dolled up sexualized version.
Yeah. And she that night comes to him.
Yeah.
After they have this little eye tussle,
tug of eyes.
Yeah,
and it's pretty clear she's Mr. Eddie's girlfriend,
yes,
or something involved with him at least, and he says over and over, "I don't think we should do this. This isn't a good idea."
Yeah,
and
Pete says that, yeah.
She keeps on insisting.
Yes, and so he caves, and of course it's everything that he had wanted in his marriage. And she's constantly, basically how they are together in bed is what he yearned for, always.
Mm-hmm.
So the dream now is kind of at its peak moment. No one is going. You have everyone doesn't know about this little kind of tryst he has with Alice. Alice is just kind of into him completely. And you've got the cops and everyone just jealous as all heck. Going, oh gosh, what kind of job? This is a hell of a job. His or ours. These goofy lines that these cops are having because they're stuck following this guy.
Again, very pulpy dime store novel. It's got the comic relief elements in there.
Yeah.
It's that story that he wants to be in.
Yeah, but then, again, the dream starts falling apart. Then we go into that portion I mentioned earlier of where Renee needed to be with Mr. Eddie one night. And literally reality starts seeping in. It's trying to break through. And this dream starts becoming unstable even more. There have been signs earlier, but at this point, it's really shaking. And it's falling apart. And his parents, Pete's parents, and Sheila have more or less, they've confronted him saying you've got to tell us what's going on. You have changed. Even Sheila breaks up with him going, you've gone with her now. Mm-hmm. You've gone to the other, you've made this choice, and is actually turning to the father and saying, why won't you tell him what you saw? Basically, why won't you tell him the truth? Why won't you tell him reality? So you've got that going on. But then on top of it, too, you got Mr. Eddie / Dick Laurent, who is ruining the dream, too. He now has figured out that these two, Pete and Alice, have been fooling around. And so now even that is breaking apart. It's falling apart. You can't attain that anymore. But it's right now, Eddie is still kind of acting friendly, but he hasn't gone and outright said, you're I know what you're doing yet. So basically Alice and Pete still meet up. And it's during this time that Alice starts talking about what happened to her, and it's really what happened to Renee.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the whole audition thing of meeting up with Andy, and we hear this line again. This is the second time we hear it, of I met this guy, Andy, at a place called Moke's, and he had a job. Now we actually kind of flash back to a certain this is even though we're seeing Alice, this is basically what had kind of happened to Renee.
Mm-hmm.
And so she went to this mansion with all the weird stuff, like security guards that won't let her leave. You got weird bodybuilder guys in the other room and all that. And come nightfall, she's summoned into this room, which is the quote-unquote audition, and at gunpoint has to kind of perform. And it's probably one of the most disturbing scenes in the whole movie, because...
It's crazy because nobody even tells her what to do.
Yeah.
They just point a gun at her and she knows what she has to do.
Yeah.
Like, what else would it be? These
Like,
fucking men.
Mr. Eddie kind of makes these certain gestures, and she kind of, like, with his eyes and stuff, and real seedy stuff. Like, and this whole scene, it's just scuzzy as hell. But, like, at the same time, at the heart of it, it's really heartbreaking, because she was basically assaulted and forced into this. This was not what she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And then we flash back now, because this is Alice telling Pete all of this. We flash back to Pete. And what's the first thing that Pete says? It was...
Why didn't you just leave?
Yeah, why didn't you just leave?
Which is the classic, like...
It's
what all the guys come up with now. Yeah. Like, oh, well, why didn't you quit that job where the boss was harassing you every day?
Yeah,
why didn't you do something?
Yeah.
I mean, this is as much your fault as it is theirs.
Yeah. And that is so key to this.
And that's in his fantasy.
Yeah.
Like, that's really what he thinks.
Because you're seeing in that scene, too, Pete is getting jealous. And then what you're seeing is Fred's jealousy boiling back up. Because, wait, someone else had you? Or someone else touched you? Mm-hmm. What? You're mine.
It's all just that possessiveness.
You're mine and nothing else.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing he says. And like you say, this is the kind of shit we see or read, hear all around us, is like, it's the heart of the Me Too stuff. And that's why I brought it up earlier, is because you've got these people going, why didn't you dress less slutty? Or instead of,
you should have broken up with that guy.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Or like rape prevention for women, but nothing for the guys. You know, like the guys can do, there's nothing to kind of say, hey, guys, you need to start rewiring your thinking of how to treat people.
Right.
You know, it's always on women. And so that's a really key moment to me. Again, another key. But it's something very telling about our narrator, but also all the men in this film. And this is essentially the essence of film noir in general. This is
it's a bunch of macho bullshit.
Yeah, it's macho bullshit. It's seedy male egotism just unleashed.
Mm-hmm.
And so
even Laura, like the original film noir, a detective falls in love with a dead woman and is determined to find her killer just because she's pretty.
Yeah.
And he feels a connection to her.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's just one glance. Ah, yes. And exactly. And so this is Lynch's neo-noir spin on everything. And so here you've got then, because the dream is now being twisted. Now Alice is tainted. This sweet, sugary, kind of sexy vixen starts getting a darker edge to her behavior.
She's coming up with the plans, the criminal plans to rob somebody, get enough money to flee the country and be together. And in the middle of that robbery, she turns the gun on Pete.
Yeah.
Just as a joke, though. It's okay.
Yeah.
But she becomes more of a threat at that time.
You're seeing a darker edge that you've never seen before. And it all started at that point when Pete started seeing Alice in a different light. And so then here we are with that whole plot to kill Andy. So this is still the dream, but like their idea is to run away. This kind of the dream is to essentially, the dream of Pete and Alice, this dream couple, is essentially trying to escape from this reality that's chasing them, from the breaking apart of all of this. And so we see this kind of get bungled. It's kind of hysterical that poor Andy, he comes downstairs, Pete's hiding, and Andy gets knocked in the head with some kind of fertility god, and where the two breasts basically create.
Oh, is that what they did?
create two massive like gashes in his forehead. So at first we think Andy's dead, and but he's not. He jumps up once he sees Alice and Pete together gathering everything, and here they are getting cocky, thinking that their plan worked. Andy jumps at them and goes head first into, as you said, the strongest, most durable glass table
ever
in the
built.
world. And so now,
Or else he has no skull in the front of his head.
Yeah.
And it's just all butter in there. But yeah, the corner of the glass table goes straight into his brain.
Yeah.
Didn't shatter or anything.
Nothing.
It just goes right
clean cut. And so here we are now. We've got a murder on our hands. Now this dream is truly corrupted. Now we've got like the reality truly now part of this fake narrative.
Well, in reality, how do you think he killed
He
Andy?
hid Andy, hid from Andy, like, because how I see is that Dick Laurent was killed, because then after that we're after the party, he's at home with Renee. He kills Renee. Once he's done that, he's got to finish the job.
God,
because
I told Andy
earlier
all this
that night,
shit.
Andy knew I killed Dick, so now I got to finish it off. So I think it just got as bungled.
Because there's no like real world evidence that he did kill Andy. We're just presuming that because it's part of the dream,
Yeah,
that it happened
it's
in
part
real
of
life
this
too.
narrative. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
okay.
who else, quite frankly, would kill Andy at this point?
Yeah.
Like, he's got the motive. Fred's got the motive to do this. So, what's interesting though, when we kind of look back at what Pete and Alice are doing with Andy. So Andy's dead now. They're trying to get all the cash and loot, whatever they can find. Alice is busy doing her shady little stuff. And Pete looks at this framed photo and literally is seeing now the two realities merging. You are now seeing Renee and Alice in a photo with Andy and Dick Laurent in under the same frame. And so when asked about this, Alice just coldly says, "This is me," pointing to the blonde.
Yeah.
But completely kind of ignoring the Renee part. So now reality...
He has a violent nosebleed.
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
His head is splitting again.
Everything's
he has to go
shaking.
upstairs.
He's
yeah.
going upstairs. He's trying to kind of get aspirin or whatever.
And the hallway upstairs is a hotel hallway.
It is the Lost Highway Hotel.
Where he found Dick Laurent.
Yeah. So we're
In
seeing
real life.
we're seeing now, this is another puzzle piece that's being laid down. This is the first time we're seeing this stuff now. And he, as Pete, is going down this hallway, and he opens up the door that Renee and Dick Laurent were in. And when he does, he sees this demonic version of the woman.
It's all very orange and red in there.
And she's like, "Don't you want to ask me why?" And kind of in this condescending, mocking kind of tone. And so like it's basically those insecurities, those fears just manifesting into this kind of mocking kind of demon or whatever you want to call it.
Like if Alice is his dream version of his wife, that's the demon version.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so then he's slamming that door. He's running away from the reality once again, and he goes back downstairs and finds himself back in the dream with Alice. All right, we've got the money. Let's get out of here. And I know a fence in the desert. Well, where is it? It's in that cabin that we saw earlier.
A vision of, yeah.
Where we saw
where the curtains parted.
Yep. This is where everything is coming to a head now. Now, when they get there, the fence is there. No one's there. It's an empty, seedy-looking little cabin. And so they're like, this is essentially Fred/Pete's last grasp/gasp of holding on to this dream, of like fooling around with Alice out in this desert with the headlights on.
We've already seen the mystery man enter this cabin
earlier in the film.
Yeah, it's it's where evil lives.
Yes. So outside of this cabin is when they're kind of fooling around, But what's important about this is that once again, and most importantly, we're hearing that Song of the Siren song. This is him trying to hold on to that dream, that passionate dream of his. And what is a siren? It's in mythology, it's just a creature that calls out men,
brings men
to their deaths.
Yeah.
And so, but it's beautiful. It's the most beautiful, alluring thing that these men have heard. And so this is the song that we've now heard 3 times now. And all he can say over and over again is, I want you. I want you. Again, possessive, aggressive, male. You're mine. And what does she say? You'll never have me. And that's like...
And he balls his fists as she walks into the cabin.
The dream is dead now. You'll never have me. Your dream does not exist.
Right.
So she leaves Pete alone, lying in the desert, while she walks into the cabin.
Totally naked, by the way.
Totally naked. And what happens when that dream is dead? Bill Pullman / Fred stands up. Pete is gone. And so and of course, we've got the mystery man all over the place now. He's popping up, revealing himself everywhere. He's in the car 1 second, but more importantly, he's at that cabin door.
Mm-hmm.
And lures Fred over, saying, come on in. And Alice is gone. She's not in the cabin, just the mystery man. And you've got Fred asking, where's Alice? Where's Alice? And the most important thing, mystery man says, is there is only Renee. There is no Alice. If she said she was Alice, she's lying. Basically,
But he invented her.
Yeah, you are kidding
lying.
yourself. Yeah, and what does he do? He throws that camera in Fred's face and saying, what about you? What's your name? He is, again, it's that mocking...
Bringing the truth to him, yeah.
So you could essentially say at this point that Alice is the same as the mystery man. That this is just evil taking different forms.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mocking. It's like you saw Alice kind of disintegrating into something evil in that hallway scene when Pete was trying to find aspirin earlier. Mm-hmm. So it's almost as if that facade was falling apart too.
Yeah.
So like here you've got the mystery man again in that same kind of mocking tone. Like, well, what about you? What's your name? And chasing Fred to his car, and he's trying to pull out, and the hands coming out, reaching out, I'm gonna get you. It's all spooky.
Yeah, he's very ghoulish.
Yeah. And so then when Fred escapes and finds himself after driving down the dark hall, the dark freeway, he finds himself at the Lost Highway Hotel. This is the final kind of piece of the puzzle of exactly what happened.
Yeah, he's reenacting now what he did in real life.
They're giving us, the viewer, the information we needed to put the last pieces together. Of like, this was when earlier we had Fred basically follow Renee to the hotel and find Mr. Eddie. And so we see it's matched very closely to what we saw earlier with Pete, the walk down the hallway. We're seeing the room 25 that he kind of hid out in while waiting until they were done. You glance over to 26 where Mr. Eddie and Renee were fooling around. And so he waits. We watch till she leaves. Then he grabs Mr. Eddie, takes him out to the desert to be killed. So now we've got, and again, Mr. Eddie / Dick Laurent sees the mystery man too. These are evil men that have been lured by the same evil. Like, this is the evil of all men.
Now,
and
when the mystery man, after Mr. Dick Laurent, whatever we want to call him, he's been slashed in the neck. Not dead yet, though, because he's still got a minute. Mystery man brings out a miniature mid-90s TV with a huge antenna.
Yeah.
Which implies that he's picking up a broadcast from
Yeah,
somewhere
he's
with this information.
technically savvy. Yeah.
He set up a satellite dish a little
Yeah.
ways away. And this clip on the little TV that Dick Laurent sees is one of his little porno parties that he had at his mansion, or Andy's mansion.
It's essentially Dick Laurent's sin. That's his truth. Of like, I took your wife.
This is like the last thing you see before you die.
Yeah. Like, this is your judgment. This was Dick Laurent's judgment of, you took this man's wife. You filmed her in horrible ways.
And you're still holding that over her
yeah.
head and forcing her into sex with you.
Yeah. And so this is the price you have to pay now. You have to pay the piper now. So
was Renee into it? Did she like doing the porno work?
There is an argument for that, especially with the whole femme fatale kind of mold that they fit her in.
The clip on the TV, which we are kind of assuming to be reality, all the video stuff is reality. It seemed to be her secret world that she would escape her husband to go be a part of. It didn't seem like a blackmail situation.
No. I think there is an argument for that. I also think, though, we are, from frame one, always seeing this through a male gaze, though.
Yeah.
And when you see what had happened to her at that audition, I always see her as a victim, even if she was technically, quote unquote, into it. It's still, she has been victimized, and
right. If you force somebody into that, even if they kind of get used to it, doesn't mean they were ever into it.
She has learned to survive, and that's what she does, and that's what's so important about that audition scene. If you see in the beginning, she is terrified. She is just like freaking out.
But then she locks into what she knows she has to do.
She is in survival mode then. And then you see her face drop, and that's the Renee we know, throughout, from earlier in the film and for the rest. Like, you had this glimpse of what Renee used to be. And that, to me, is the most tragic thing. And so you saw the death of what Renee was before all these evil men had their way, right there in front of you. And what was really interesting was, at the time, there were like a couple film critics that actually pointed that scene out and said, oh, it was so sexy and all this. You saw her into it and all this. And I kind of looked at it very differently, though. Like, yeah, from a sensory perspective, from the male gaze, yeah. Mm-hmm. She's a beautiful woman. How can you not? But if you look at really what's happening in those frames, you are seeing the death of a soul. And it's very tragic to me, that scene. And like, she's always looking over her shoulder, literally from that point on in her life. You see that earlier in the film before she's murdered by Fred. You see that when she's cleaning her face with the makeup, when she's hunched over, literally trying to hide from him, and he's always there. He's in her reflection and everything. And when he does leave the room, there's this look, you can almost miss it, but she does this double take with her eyes just to make sure that he's gone, that she has a moment's peace. And like, you have these little moments that are just heartbreaking to me, especially on repeat viewings. Like, this is stuff that no one ever gets right out of the gate. Yeah, this is stuff that like is what's so fun about this film to me. Yeah. And so here we are. Okay, so we've got now the judgment of Dick Laurent. He is then killed by. What's interesting is that you're seeing the mystery man do the shooting, the actual killing of Dick Laurent, and then whisper something in Fred's ear. But then we cut away, and then when we cut back,
and he's got the gun.
He's got the gun in his hand. And he's still listening too. He's still listening to the whispers of the mystery man in his ear, yet no one's there. So
devil on his shoulder.
Yeah, yep. And so now the dream is dead officially. What does he do? He goes home, and we're seeing everything loop back into itself. He is the one behind the little speaker message of Dick Laurent is dead. He is literally telling himself this message from the beginning of the film. So if you look back to the beginning of the film, that's the newly resurrected Fred, in a sense. Cops have caught on to what's going on, and this is a clue into what's reality, what's not, and why Fred was responsible for Andy's death. Is that there's a point where we're back at Andy's place. Now, this is
and
reality.
they look at the same photo.
They see the same photo, but there's only one Patricia Arquette. There's Renee only,
which
no
brings
Alice.
them back to go. We just saw those people when they were asking about their break-in, and they found videotapes and stuff.
Yeah, so they've put the pieces together now. Now, what's interesting though is that the other two cops. You got two sets of cops now. You got the two sets of cops from two different worlds.
Yeah.
Two different realities.
Are they both
together in the same room?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. So then the original cops are saying, hey, that's Renee. We interviewed her and checked out her place because of that report, that break-in report. The other cops say, yeah, and Pete's prints are all over the place. So, like, literally, you're seeing how the reality...
It went right over my head.
So you've got the reality of what they saw, the police saw.
Yeah.
But at the same time, too, this is a clue that you've got... This isn't reality as we know it. This has been a part of an eternal purgatory loop, if you want to call it. Because after that, you've got Fred talking to himself. We're now from the end of the film, now in the looped back to the beginning of the film. He's talking to himself.
So from the beginning, we never really saw reality.
We never saw the full true reality. We are just seeing the reset button.
Yeah.
In a sense. So you've got then the cops coming to the house after the Fred that we've been following has now kind of messaged himself. Dick Laurent is dead. Suddenly the cops are kind of coming out of the car. They spot each other. Fred flees the scene.
So even going to the beginning of the movie, not even his dream or fantasy or anything like that, he really didn't know anything about Dick Laurent because he didn't want to remember doing it.
He didn't want to remember it.
So he just skipped that part of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in the beginning of the film too, you hear those sirens. Those are the sirens that we are now experiencing as our Fred is fleeing the scene and the cops are chasing. And this is my favorite shot too, is that you've got all these cops, like 20 cars or whatever, in a kind of very Blues Brother-ish kind of way, chasing Fred down the desert freeway. And he's constantly looking behind him.
Right. It's sort of like, you almost get the sense he's mumbling to himself, going like, nope, this isn't happening.
Yeah.
He's still running
man.
from the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, this is truth. This is reality chasing him down. Like, it's basically judgment. It's quite literally chasing him. And he's trying to flee. And he can't get away. We're down that same highway shot that opened the film, too. And what does he do? He transforms yet again. We are now going into yet another loop. So he is might be.
We don't see how it finishes though.
Oh,
the transformation.
No, because the story, we've seen the story. It's done this before, and it will happen again. Mm-hmm. And so this is essentially, in some ways, Fred's hell. Yeah. And so, and that's why I really liked...
That could be an actual hell, too, the way it looks like he's burning in the car.
That's why I like that, too, because it totally fits within this structure. Mm-hmm. And so...
that's right. I'm so smart. Yep. I figured it all out.
And so, what's great about it, too, is that it's basically his own doing. Even, who knows how many hundreds of times this loop has gone. Yeah. There was still... that part of him that was calling him back of what are you doing? Please, come back to us,
Wonder if there was a bigger family at the start of the looping.
But it is his own doing. And there's a great line in an old Stephen King miniseries, Storm of the Century, where
I've never heard that described as great, but okay.
I actually I know. But at the same time too, I actually, of all the miniseries, I think that's the most fully formed, really strong television movie that he ever did. But one of the great lines in that was that's what hell is. It's repetition. And that's what Fred's going through right now, is that this is eternal. This is his eternal damnation. Like, it's the tempting. You get a taste of it, so you yearn for it.
Mm-hmm.
But you will never have it. Because you can never attain you're too selfish. You're too... Your ego, your self-worth is just so inflated. Like, it's just... You never loved Renee. You never respected Renee. You saw her as just as much as an object as Dick Laurent, Andy, all of those assholes. He is just as pathetic and corrupt. And so, and that's why, to me, I have all the sympathy for the world with Renee, is that she was the victim, not Fred.
She was the one who was taken advantage of by Dick Laurent, and murdered by her husband.
Yeah. And so that's it. That's how I see it.
Well, good night, folks. This has been a masterclass in Lost Highway with Ryan Wick. That clears up a lot of the questions people have about the movie, because you figure, like, if you just watch it one time, it may not all click.
No.
You start asking the question, like, well, why is Robert Blake talking to Bill Pullman? Like, I can understand why the second half of the movie would all be a dream or something, but the first half isn't a dream.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of still in his own weird little psyche loop.
Yeah. You know, I see...
And, like, who made the videotapes that were dropped off? Well, there were no physical videotapes at the house. This is all just part of the punishment.
Yeah. And also, too, like, I personally, I feel like even the mystery man did walk among them at one point. Even though what we're seeing is this twisted kind of loop where everything's merging.
And everything's out of order. That's why a lot of people get confused, I think.
Yeah. It's totally non-linear, too. And that's why I thought it would be a neat one, too, because from an editor's standpoint, like, how they tell the story, it doesn't have to be this confusing or out there or whatever. But what we are literally doing is we're in the mind of this madman.
Yeah.
And so...
Sorry, I'm just watching a dog maybe take a shit on my front lawn out the window. No, I think they're gone. It's fine.
Oh, that's nice. The dog's taking shit going, shut up out there. But yeah, like, it's to me, I feel that this is an evil that was in all these men from the get-go.
Yeah.
From reality on. Even if we're seeing a kind of mutation of that truth, the truth still existed.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, with some of these...
Mr. Eddie, who is the gangster, he lives in that world. He walks around packing guns and stuff with his goons in the back seat. When he gets the mystery man on the phone, he's like, I want you to talk to a friend of mine. He's very comfortable with the mystery man.
Yeah.
Whereas Bill Pullman kind of goes like, I don't know you.
Yeah.
I'm better than that. I've never met you before in my life.
Yeah. And he's like, what are you talking about? Mystery Man's like, of course you know. I would not come. I would not be here unless you invited me.
Yeah.
It's like, who are you kidding? What? Yeah. Throwing cameras in the poor guy's face. So, yeah. Like, it's...
This is... I have a new appreciation for this movie.
Oh, cool.
I can actually... Now, knowing what it's really about and having at least a few interpretations of this now in my head... I feel like I could recommend it to people.
Oh my God.
Whereas before I'd be like, I don't know what the fuck that movie was about. So I don't know if I can recommend it to you.
Oh man.
Doesn't make any sense, but it does make sense. You just have to give it its day in court, essentially. You have to really analyze how it's all piecing together, why it ends and begins the way it does.
Yeah.
And why the character changes occur when they do. Yeah. And it all does make sense.
Well, that's the thing that I always find interesting about Lynch, is because a lot of people just brush him off a lot, saying he's just being weird for weird's sake.
Yeah, I never believed that.
Yeah,
but I just don't understand it sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and sometimes I think he doesn't want other people to understand. I think there are certain things that are just for him, and maybe even I think he would be I can't speak for him, but I could see him say that maybe some of that even he'll never know, but because he's so much rooted in instinct of like feelings and what inspired him, dreams. Like he'll have this image of something that will be the seed that kind of ferments and kind of blossoms into what he shoots the very next day.
And it might not have any place in the project
Yeah.
until he puts it there, and then he'll make some sense of it
But
later.
his gut is telling him it needs to be here. And
Yeah.
that's, to me, fascinating. It can be maddening for some viewers, a lot of viewers.
I would hate to be on his crew
Yeah.
when he's just like coming up with new shit every day.
Yeah.
David, baby, we had a plan. We all
Yeah.
signed up for this schedule. Why are you coming up with new stuff now?
Well, I would feel really bad for the producers. Like, how much is that going to cost? You want to do what? But, yeah, like, and you see that consistently being done throughout all his films. And this, you see a lot of shades of the same themes really start taking root from this point on in his career. They're like, he's always had dream logic as part of his narrative, always, from Eraserhead on. But at the same time, like we said earlier, there's some kind of reality that a lot of viewers can kind of grasp on. Blue Velvet feels like Hardy Boys in Hell or something.
That was his sort of pitch.
Yeah, and then you've got like Elephant Man, which is probably one of his more quote-unquote normal films, where it's a very touching character exploration. A little later, ironically, he made his most normal film, so to
Straight
speak,
Story?
Straight Story, after this film, because there was such a backlash to this.
He was like, let's try something else.
So he's like, okay, and he works with Disney. He made a G-rated film after this movie, which is like borderline NC-17. Like it really pushes the rating, the R rating. And what does he do? He goes the exact opposite and makes a G-rated movie that is just so heartfelt and beautiful. It's such a simple film. But
I think it's sort of like a painter like Picasso, known for his abstract perspective on things. He still, if he needed to prove to anybody he could actually draw like true to life portraits of people, he could.
Yeah.
He was like an excellent artist, period.
Yeah.
And his, I forget what the word for it is, his Picasso style is just how he felt it was working best for him.
That's his true expression.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Lynch's movies, his more experimental stuff like this.
Yeah.
Not a straightforward narrative.
No.
That's the true Lynch, but he's an excellent filmmaker still because he can make Elephant Man and Straight Story.
He chooses not to, though.
Right, yeah.
With these films.
He doesn't need to.
Yeah.
He made enough money with Eraserhead, I guess.
Yeah. Or that Twin Peaks money, that original stuff. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's where he really cashed it in. And that's what's so interesting. And that kind of goes back to Fire Walk With Me, where even fans of Twin Peaks at first were very angry with that film because he took Twin Peaks in a direction that they did not want.
Right. It wasn't TV anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't on ABC.
Yeah. And also, too, the narrative on that is all over the place. And so, it questions reality in times. Not to the extent of Lost Highway. This, to me, I like to call it the kind of long-form dream logic, is that it's the whole film, top to bottom. Mm-hmm. And he kind of refines that then with Mulholland Drive later, which is more palatable for a lot of viewers. It has characters you can love in a sense. You know, Naomi Watts. Thank you. Different film altogether. Naomi Watts is character, you're rooting for her, and you're invested in a way that you're not with Bill Pullman's character, and you're not supposed to. That's the key. Is that the tragedy in Lost Highway is that Renee's the victim. Mm-hmm. And in true film noir nature, like, these are all horrible men. Yeah. And whereas with Mulholland Drive, it's a more tragic film because you've got a woman. It's, again, a woman in trouble kind of film, but it's one of those where you want her to find happiness, and she self-destructs. Yeah. And that one, 3/4 of that film are a normal movie because it was a TV pilot.
Mm-hmm.
But then he went to his dream logic state for that third act. But what he did brilliantly is then turned this whole thing in that film into a dream, just like in Lost Highway. And from that point on, he never looked back. When you look at Inland Empire and then Twin Peaks: The Return, it's all dream logic. Like all of that stuff is just you're being thrown into the deep end. Lynch at that point, he just gives zero fucks.
Well, that's good to know for when I watch these things. Then I'm not going to be holding out any hope for a normal experience.
No.
I've already seen one clip from Twin Peaks: The Return of the nuclear bomb going off.
It's extraordinary.
And yeah, it like freezes the instant where this bomb explodes in a nuclear mushroom cloud, zooms into the mushroom cloud, and then it's several minutes of flashing lights and noises.
You were essentially seeing the birth of evil, but that's a whole nother.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's hold off on that one. That's another episode.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Well,
That's for the Twin Peaks podcast that will be coming up. But yeah, that is an extraordinary sequence, though. But that is like pure, undiluted Lynch.
Yeah, that's how everybody describes it. It's pure Lynch, uncut,
Yep,
mainlined,
straight from the source. So.
Well, this has been very educational. Thank you for
I hope it was
bringing this movie. No, this is a good time.
Oh, cool.
This may be our longest episode ever.
Oh my God, did we really talk?
Yeah,
about
it was 20 minutes at the beginning, and we're at an hour and 16 right now. Maybe Chad will cut that down a little bit.
Okay,
maybe he will.
Chop a lot. Go nuts.
But yeah, thanks for coming in. We can plug Paradise PD one more time.
Yeah.
When does that premiere?
August 31st, I think.
On Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix.
So none of that Hulu shit.
Yeah, none of that damn Hulu.
Are you on social media? Do you want to share that with people, or
I'm hardly on it, but
keep
like
the weirdos at bay?
No, Twitter. I'm at Ryan Scott Wick. Say hi if you want.
Ryan Scudwick?
Scott.
Oh,
Scott. Scud. Yeah, I'm a Scud.
Ryan Scotwick.
Yes. And real boring.
As always, I am at Mark Heiliger, but I'm not going to tell you how to spell it. That's for you to find out. Great. This is awesome.
This was awesome.
Thanks for coming. High five.
Thank you.
Cool. We're out.
It's Dragon Wagon.
Gamebox Monthly sends a new awesome indie tabletop game right to your door every month. There are multiple subscriptions to choose from, and you can personalize them to fit your style. Also, you're guaranteed to never get a title you already have, letting you focus on what matters most, having a great time with great people.
So visit GameboxMonthly.com and use the promo code DRAGON to get an exclusive discount just for the hell with this listeners.
Once again, that's GameboxMonthly.com.
Rediscover social.